Okay, so what is a good life? We're about to break down the real secret. And this isn't just some opinion. It's backed by the longest study on human happiness ever.
You know, most of us spend our lives chasing happiness, right? We think it's about money, success, or just having fun. But what if we're all looking in completely the wrong place? What if the longest scientific study in history proved just that, and that the real answer has been hiding in plain sight this whole time?
So in the next few minutes, we're going to decode a song that hit #1 with 0 instruments. Then we'll explore 2 ancient paths to joy and even take a look inside your brain to see how pleasure actually works. And you're definitely going to want to stick around because the final secret, the one discovered over 85 years, well, it's the one thing that has the power to change literally everything.
All right, let's start with something you probably know. A super simple message about happiness that, kind of against all odds, took over the entire world.
So back in 1988, Bobby McFerrin's Don't Worry, Be Happy just became this global phenomenon. And get this, he used only his voice. No guitars, no drums, no synths, nothing. Just the human voice. And it climbed all the way to the top of the charts. It just goes to show you, a simple, powerful message can connect with millions of people.
But where the song came from is even more interesting. It wasn't cooked up in some fancy recording studio. McFerrin actually saw the phrase on a simple poster, a quote from an Indian spiritual guru named Meher Baba. It's just a perfect example of how a really profound idea can go from a little postcard to a global anthem.
And you know what? This idea of simple, viral happiness wasn't just in music. At the same time, another icon was on a very similar path, the smiley face. It started as just a quick sketch for a company's internal morale campaign. The artist got paid $45 for it, but that little icon escaped, it got a catchphrase tacked onto it, and boom, it became one of the most recognizable symbols on the entire planet.
So, these modern symbols of simple happiness, they're really just echoes of a much, much older conversation. So let's rewind the clock, go back thousands of years, and see how ancient philosophers tackled this exact same question.
Okay, so around 300 BC in Athens, you basically had 2 major schools of thought pop up, and they had very different roadmaps for a good life. On one side, you had the Stoics. They were all about virtue and duty. And on the other, the Epicureans. They focused on pleasure, but not in the way you might think. For them, pleasure was about tranquility, being free from pain and work.
So for the Stoics, and this is the key point, virtue wasn't a way to get something else. Virtue was the thing. Living a just, courageous, and wise life, that was the ultimate prize, period. Didn't matter what the outcome was.
But for the Epicureans, the goal was totally different. Yeah, things like friendship and virtue were super important, but they saw them as tools, really reliable tools, to get to the real goal, a peaceful, pleasant life, totally free from anxiety.
Okay, so these ancient ideas, they bring up a really fundamental question. What even is pleasure, and how does it connect to happiness? Well, modern neuroscience gives us this incredible look right inside the machine.
So, scientists like to break happiness down into 2 parts. First, there's Hedonia. That's the pleasure you feel in the moment. You know, tasting great food, feeling the sun on your skin. Then there's Eudaimonia, and that's way deeper. It's that sense of meaning, of purpose, the feeling that you're living a life that's worthwhile. They're different, for sure, but they are also deeply connected.
And this next part, it's brilliant. It shows a really critical distinction your brain makes. And understanding this is absolutely key to getting everything from simple joy all the way to the devastating trap of addiction. Check this out. Your brain has completely separate systems for liking something and for wanting it. Liking is the actual pure pleasure. It's generated in these tiny little hedonic hotspots in your brain. But wanting? That's the motivation, the craving. That's driven by dopamine. Now, in addiction, the wanting system just goes into total overdrive, while the liking system basically flatlines. And that's why an addict can compulsively crave a drug that actually brings them 0 pleasure anymore.
So, if happiness isn't just about chasing these fleeting moments of pleasure, then what is the real key to a lasting good life? Well, the answer comes from one of the most ambitious scientific studies ever.
It's called the Harvard Study of Adult Development, and they've been tracking the lives of over 700 people and their families all the way back since 1938. They followed them from when they were boys through middle age into old age, collecting data on everything: their health, their work, their relationships, their entire lives. It is, without a doubt, the longest study on human life ever done.
So after 85 years, After collecting literal mountains of data, after tracking hundreds and hundreds of lives, the conclusion was just stunningly clear. The single biggest thing that predicted a happy and healthy life wasn't wealth, it wasn't fame, it wasn't career success. It was the quality of their relationships.
But this incredible discovery, it comes with a really stark and urgent warning. And I think the best way to understand that warning is through the story of just one of the people in the study.
A participant named Sterling Ainsley. He always called himself an optimist, put on a brave face. But the reality was, his life was kind of a ghost town of neglected relationships. He rarely saw his kids, hadn't spoken to his sister in decades. In fact, he didn't even know if she was still alive. His story is just this tragic reminder of how easily our most important connections can just wither away, leaving this void that we might not even admit is there until it's way, way too late.
Okay, look at this number, 26%. That is the increased odds of dying in any given year for someone who is chronically lonely. Let that sink in. Ongoing loneliness is more dangerous to your health than obesity.
And this is not some rare problem that only affects a few people. We are facing a global epidemic of loneliness. 1 in 3 adults around the world says they feel lonely. And maybe the most shocking part, the loneliest group of all is young adults.
So the big question is, what do we do about it, right? If good relationships are the key, how on earth do we build and maintain them when the world seems designed to pull us apart? Well, the study offers a clear prescription.
The researchers say we need to start thinking about our relationships as a form of social fitness. Just like physical fitness, it's not something you do once and then you're done. It takes active, intentional, and consistent work. You got to take stock of who energizes you, you have to be the one to actively reach out, and you have to invest your time. Even a little bit. Invested regularly in the right people pays a lifetime of dividends for your health and your happiness. That's the workout.
So the science is crystal clear. The lessons from thousands of years of philosophy and 85 years of research, they all point in exactly the same direction. A good life is built with good relationships. So the only question left really is, who will you build with, starting today?